They didn't. The Democratic contenders attacked Joe Biden and President Obama. Ahead on Red and Blue, what sources are telling us about how Mr. Obama is responding and how Bernie Sanders plans to take on the frontrunner before the next debate. We'll talk to his campaign's national press secretary. Plus, the president holds his 60th rally since taking office in a state that was key to his 2016 election. We'll talk to a reporter on the ground in Ohio about how he is courting voters. Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. After 2 nights of debating, Democrats are not only targeting President Trump, but also their own party's past policies. On the first night in Detroit, candidates went after 2 people, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. On night 2, candidates also focused their attacks on 2 people, Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Here's how Biden responded to the attacks today.
Well, I expected it. And look, I hope we're going to get a chance to talk about the future of these other debates that are coming up. I'm looking forward to them. And I must tell you, I was a little surprised at how much their incoming was about Barack. And he focused on immigration. And what he did was serious. He changed the dialogue. He changed the whole question. He changed what was going on. And the idea that somehow it's comparable to what this guy's doing is absolutely bizarre. Look, this is 3 years later. The world has changed. President Trump has turned it upside down internationally. He has turned it upside down economically. People are hurting badly. There's no response. We faced a different problem 10 years ago when the economy collapsed because of Republican policies.
Those attacks have sparked concern Democrats are too focused on tearing down their primary rivals and not the president. In the Washington Post last night, chief political correspondent Balz wrote, quote, "By the end of the evening, the candidates had done as much to make a case against one another as against the president, without offering much in the way of an aspirational message or connecting directly with the voters they will need to win the presidential election." That's a warning also coming from former President Obama's inner circle. A source familiar with Obama's thinking tells CBS News the former president believes his legacy will be fine after last night's attacks. The associate warned Democrats, though, quote, "It is perilous to the party to attack one of the most popular figures among voters in the country. This primary has got to be about making the strongest possible case against Donald Trump and not be a circular firing squad. It could ultimately backfire on candidates who choose to engage in this rhetoric." And Balz joins me now from Washington. He is the Washington Post's chief correspondent covering national politics. Also with us is Jennifer Palmieri, the former communications director for both the Obama White House and Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. Thanks to both of you for being with us. Dan, let me start with you. President Obama is still popular with Democrats. So how risky of a strategy is this to attack his past policies?
Well, I think it's an unthinking strategy, frankly. I think if you asked every candidate on that stage last night or on the stage Tuesday night, if part of their strategy was to attack former President Obama, they would recoil and say absolutely not. But in going after former Vice President Biden, they are doing some of that along the way, thinkingly or unthinkingly. And I think that the reaction that we've seen overnight to what happened in Detroit, particularly on Wednesday night, is an indication that people are going to begin to recalibrate how they talk about this and think about this. It was striking that President Trump emerged not unscathed, but there was no sustained attack on him, whereas former President Obama caught some of the glancing blows that were aimed at Mr. Biden.
It's interesting because it does seem that Biden was the target, and by virtue of him having served in Obama's administration, there was the glancing Obama criticism as well. Do you think that this is hurtful, though, for the Democrats, Jen?
I don't think it's hurtful to President Obama, right? I mean, he has a 96% approval rating with Democrats, and he's the most popular figure in America, literally. But I do think that it hurts the individual candidates to do this. I mean, I think that what you saw happen last night in particular is people arguing with each other over Obama's record in an effort to hurt Biden, but really having arguments that don't make sense to anyone who's watching them.
Right.
And I think if you're portraying yourself as someone who is to the far left of Barack Obama, you are taking yourself out of the mainstream of the Democratic primary.
The criticisms were primarily over the deportation record under the Obama administration. Yes. But to be clear, President Obama focused on deporting criminals and sort of recent, criminals who had entered the country. He did not focus on deporting or separating families. So even though there were more deportations under the Obama administration than under the Trump administration so far, which is accurate, they were different sorts of deportations.
Yes, that's right, Tanya. And that what President Obama had done was prioritized deporting people that had actual criminal records, not people who had just were not documented, but they had committed crimes in the United States, and also people who came across, who most recently arrived, but not obviously separating children. It was a means of trying to manage a difficult situation where Congress would not pass comprehensive immigration reform, and this was a means of a humane way of dealing with this, so that you were only prioritizing deporting criminals and not deporting families.
And some of that distinction was lost on the debate stage last night. I just want to point that out. But Dan, much of these debates were focused on highlighting the contrast between the Democratic candidates. So after more than 4 hours of dialogue, is it any more clear to you where those lines are drawn?
Well, I think that the Tuesday night debate was quite illuminating in describing and exposing what are real differences between the progressive wing of the party and the center-left part of the party. That was a very tough, spirited debate, but I thought it was a more substantive debate than we saw on Wednesday night. So it's clear that there's an ideological fight that's going on, and Senator Sanders and Senator Warren more than held their own on Tuesday night, and I think that the progressive wing of the party came out of that feeling, in a sense, ascendant. I mean, as one person who's, part of that part of the party said to me yesterday, for the first time, the progressive wing was literally and figuratively at center stage in a Democratic debate. So that's going to go on, and I think until you have Senator Sanders and Senator Warren and former Vice President Biden and Senator Harris all on the stage together, you can't fully litigate that, and that's what we're going to see over the coming months.
So, Jen, looking at the 20 candidates over the 2 nights, who had the most inspiring message combined with sort of the most concrete policies? Because we know when President Obama came on the scene, he was inspiring, right? He was a candidate that inspired voters. So when you look for that sort of X factor, do you see any of the candidates on either night that possess it?
I would say, I mean, there's I think there's a few that had that kind of spark. I think, Elizabeth Warren is very good at combining policy and connecting that with people's lives, and she makes a very effective case. Cory Booker had a very good night last night. I think he has really risen to the occasion. That's like the very best Cory Booker that we saw, and he has a very inspiring message. I think Steve Bullock, who's the governor of Montana, who introduced himself on Tuesday night, first time on the debate stage, offered something of a red state Democrat who's a progressive, but's gotten a lot of things done. So that, so I think that there are good options. There's a couple of things that might not be obvious to viewers about what's happening here sort of behind the scenes. One is the debate rules going forward are very strict. So they have a very high bar for the candidates to meet. So I think last night when you saw a lot of candidates attacking Biden and attacking Harris, they were just trying to have a moment, as we say in politics, and try to get more donors and be able to make the next round of debates. So it was a particularly bad circular firing squad, and that's the reason why. The other thing that's happening is because Biden has a big chunk of the moderates sort of primary electorate supporting him, there is a large number of candidates vying for a small number of voters. So they are really, you see a lot of people pushing left in an effort to get some of the remaining more left-leaning voters in the Democratic primary electorate. But that doesn't reflect they're not really appealing to all of the
So you don't see that
voters,
as a successful strategy?
It's not. I mean, it'll be successful for one person, right? But you have 18 people vying for it. And I think it's not great for the party overall because viewers have a sense, particularly people watching last night, that, wow, these are a lot of candidates that are way more liberal than I am, and that's probably not a great, that's not the best, that's not the party probably putting its best face forward for a